Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Passive House podcast, recorded at North American Passive House Network's conference, Passive House for All, in June 2021 in New York City. In this, the fifth of 18 interviews we recorded amidst the hustle and bustle of the conference hall floor, I chat with José Sosa Rueda, founder of the Panama Passive House chapter at Latin American Passive House Institute. A couple of quick thank yous before we get started. First, thanks to NAPHN for putting on the conference and for partnering with us on these interviews. Second, a big thank you to our sponsors who make everything we do at the Accelerator possible. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxtingwe Architects, Glavel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Rockwell North America, StoCorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsor is SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. With that, please enjoy my interview with José. I have José Sosa here. I'm super excited to talk with José. He was just on the Passive House podcast, actually, and he's been, you're a practitioner in New York City, you're a volunteer with New York Passive House, and you also have been really instrumental in establishing Passive House Institute Panama chapter, right? Passive House, is that the correct title? Yeah?
Yes, right.
Tell us about that.
I'm in the process of getting everything Passive House related to Panama and also Latin America. Like I talked with Matthew a couple months ago, was that we're trying to bring the whole movement of holistic construction open to innovation and obviously energy efficiency. And we think that Passive House is the way to do it because it is a very holistic system that just applying 5 principles kind of goes into everything. So the main focus is that just going there, trying to bring it in a way that it's easy and engaging for people.
Yeah.
Because when you go to a place like Latin America, that there's a lot of obviously growth economically because of companies and things like that. There's not a lot of growth in terms of the quality of life and construction, and that has to do with mainly everything that comes is complicated. Everything that comes is kind of bringing, new systems and new expensive materials or expensive, expensive.
Like green building approaches that are introduced, you mean?
Yeah, the green building approaches that require to put a photovoltaic panel or just put some other technology that is not readily available or, let's say, affordable for the type of country you're going to be building it on. And, that's why myself and the guys at the Latin American Passive House Institute think that the way to do it is doing Passive House because you don't have to get expensive equipment. It's just applying this holistic building science principles.
Right.
So, that's where I am. And personally, I'm trying to get the chapter in Panama going. So I'm yet to go to Panama because of the pandemic. I haven't been able to go. And then, actually set up some more legal entity with at least the name so that there's a more grounded approach, in the country. But, from New York City, I've been talking to colleagues and I've been talking to other practitioners so I can at least get the word going. And, luckily, thanks to the podcast, I got some people talking to me in the past couple of weeks, and there's one project now that they're looking to kind of implement energy analysis based on PHPP. So,
awesome.
Fingers crossed, there's something that, that can happen and people can learn about this stuff at least, because that's the point. It's just to get it out there so that it can get more traction.
Yeah. In the interview with Matthew that you had, one thing that really resonated with me was your observation that Passive House gives you the kind of the building science and empowers the practitioner to make sure that a green building is appropriate for the climate and for the building prevailing building practice. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like that how the building science element of Passive House is kind of key in your mind in terms of the development of more sustainable building in Panama and elsewhere in Latin America?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that's that's what passive house practitioners do. You kind of just become aware of everything. Like when you learn about what air tightness brings to the table and what insulation brings to the table, and you start looking at it from more than just a science perspective, but you ground it into, let's say, a cooler for beers. Like, you know that if you have a cooler, you know it's airtight, you know it has insulation, so it's going to keep the beer cool and it's going to keep the ice from melting as quickly. So when you're living in a house, you think about it the same way. Now, sometimes I like to relate that to how people have been building vernacular architecture before the modern times where everything had to be glass, and the Bauhaus and Mies and all these other guys, which, I mean, I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I'm just saying that we kind of somehow started to veer away from comfort and just for the looks of it. Yeah. And, you know, as a trained architect and architect practitioner in a way, you know, I can say we're guilty of just doing everything with ego, like, oh, we want to build the best building, the one that everyone wants to talk about. But just by doing that, you're really just putting something in the space that doesn't really help anyone that's going to be experiencing it, unless you're building a pavilion or something that people are just going to pass by, right? Yeah. And even then, you want to make them feel comfortable. So yeah, I mean, I guess when people are aware of the 5 principles and you start kind of putting it all together, you become aware of different factors that you were not aware before. Yeah. And I think that's one of the main things that at least us as passive house professionals and enthusiasts needs to kind of bring to the table. And like I was mentioning before the interview, is that how to bring everything we know to the regular Joe, you know, the person that is just having their life, looking at Instagram, doing their office job, but when they come back home, then they have to turn the AC on. And if they don't turn the AC on, then you're gonna be all sweaty and you feel uncomfortable, you cannot sleep. That just happened to me 2 days ago, that it was super hot and humid, that, you know, we moved to a new apartment, so our AC is now in our bedroom, and we don't let the AC turn on all the time, but because we cannot open the other windows and there's just a little fan, you know, we were just like, oh man, it's hot and humid and there's no way to keep it cool, because we turned the AC on to cool the place, but because of all the air leakage, the lack of insulation, the bad windows, it's just hot super quick. So, I mean, the vernacular architecture is there in a brownstone, in a brick building, because it's meant to like have a big thermal mass and keep the heat and release it slowly. But if you have an air open, you know, not an airtight building, then you get all the moisture and the humidity from the moisture and heat to come into your space, and it's just going to be uncomfortable. So, I guess I don't know if that answered the question.
No, absolutely, you did. And I think, you know, one of the things that there was that study that came out a couple months ago about wet bulb temperatures that found that, or predicts that, if we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming at that threshold, many parts of the tropical zone will have, for long periods, will have wet bulb temperatures that are so high that it's actually really dangerous for human health. And so that what you're talking about with the vernacular architecture and responses, and maybe sometimes, you know, we're going to see those responses be overwhelmed probably a little bit by heat and humidity over time. So it's just even more urgent for us to dial in solutions that really work.
Yeah, and you're right. I read on another article, scientific paper, I forget who published it, and it was talking about that the problem with climate change is not going to be as bad for northern hemisphere, and I think southern to a point, but it is the tropics, because it's going to get hotter and more humid, meaning it's going to impact the life of people, obviously, like more heat strokes and things like that, just because of temperature, but also it's going to increase the amount of air conditioning use, which is going to in itself exacerbate the heat, which in itself is going to make them be used more, and that's just going to, it's just like this snowball effect that is just kind of, it feed off of itself. And that is just going to make a lot of people go into even more poverty, because they will not have the means to like keep up, especially if you have electricity that is so expensive at the moment, right? So, I mean, that's true. Like,
well, what you were talking about with that kind of modernism's veer away from comfort, it was also kind of then saying, okay, mechanical engineers, you figure out the comfort for us so that we can, you know, we're going to go this direction. And so there's a little bit of a ceding of authority and responsibility for the performance of the building in many respects. And I think that one of the things that I see as really exciting for designers and architects is that Passive House is a means for us to reclaim that sense of responsibility and really be part of, again, solving for comfort and for health. And so while this problem that we're discussing is daunting, I think that there's certainly a big opportunity for designers and architects here.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for a lot of people. Yeah, architects, designers, people in the energy sector, people in just sustainability in general, trying to put everything together so it works. Because, like you mentioned, I mean, before, I guess modern architecture was going for more aesthetics and something more functional, which is, it's okay, but then they were just pushing the problem away to someone else who find a solution for this problem now. We were just kind of creating problems just because we wanted to achieve something different, and there was not a consensus, which I guess is one thing that happens everywhere. There are just groups of people that do one thing, and then you don't include the others that you need. And as architects, I think we should be kind of like the director of the band. We should have everyone in the same boat so that we can actually create something that is holistically well put together. Just now with New York Passive House, which is who I'm here with, I mean, they've been doing a lot of work in terms of doing education, trying to make that education be easily accessible and also affordable, and also having Ed May and Kramer and all these guys teach you through New York Passive House, the North American Passive House, that was really help. And that's the one thing that I'm trying to kind of emulate it. I would like to bring it with me in any shape or form that I can to Panama. With the Latin American Institute, we're trying to do that. We did it with a conference, but now trying to bring all this knowledge that I have and Luis Becerra has, which is in Canada, and try to do the same so that we can have a more holistic approach to it, because we've seen how this happens. You have an architect designing the building, you have the mechanical engineer doing the ventilation, you have the structural engineer doing the structure of the building, but they're not really talking to each other. So, I guess that's what BIM modeling is trying to do, having everyone on the same page. But with Passive House, I think we're so early that we've seen all this from before that we can mitigate it and make it grow faster. If we do what we want, which is bringing everyone together and having a lot of collaboration. That's what I like about the Passive House community too.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Cool. Well, this has been awesome. Is there anything else you want to share or add?
No, I mean, I'm just happy. I don't do interviews, so this is something that I'm just excited to.
You're a natural, Jose. That's great. It's awesome.
Now, thank you very much, Zach. I mean, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And again, it's just thinking out of the box, and Accelerator is definitely trying to push that envelope there. So I'm really glad that you guys are doing what you're doing, and that I'm being able to be part of it up to in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and thanks for your work. It's really, really important. I hope you enjoyed that special bonus episode of the Passive House podcast. On behalf of everyone here at the Passive House Accelerator, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more on the Passive House podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.